Shooters claim the new report on banning lead ammunition by the Health and Safety Executive could signal the beginning of the end of the use of vintage guns that can't use alternatives. Gun dealers already have customers wanting to sell their collections.
Within 24 hours of the announcement by the Health and Safety Executive that they were getting serious on an outright lead ban for everything, I had this guy on the phone saying, "Time to sell it. In fact, sell all my guns. I'll send them to you next week." He's got these guns. He doesn't see that they have any future. And I think he's just future-proofing himself rather than having money sitting there in something which he thinks probably isn't going to be very safe or useful in the future. And he just took the decision, get rid of it all.
The proposed restrictions closely reflect EU REACH proposals. They would apply to shotgun, rifle and airgun ammunition. They will impact all 600,000 live quarry shooters and an estimated 4 million target and air rifle shooters in the UK.
It's very difficult when you're trying to present evidence to people who don't want to use the evidence in a neutral way to find a fair solution. And you can see they're thinking. They've come up with the headline, "Lead is toxic and the safe amount of lead is 0." And that informs their conclusions, because if they take that line, it would then be irresponsible of them, if that were true, for them to make any exceptions at all. Because if they say the safe level is 0, to say, well, we'll let airgun users carry on, or we'll let historic gun users carry on, well, that's more than 0. And they've said 0 is the safe level. So they would be making nonsensical recommendations based on their own assertions and findings. So it's self-perpetuating. Once they've come up with that headline, you know where they're going with it.
BASC says the HSE proposals won't change the voluntary 5-year transition period that the shooting community has agreed to.
If you look at the timelines of when this regulation potentially might come in, actually it would go on beyond the end of that 5-year voluntary transition, and BASC, along with the other shooting organisations, are continuing and are committed to continuing that voluntary transition, because actually for a number of reasons it's important to continue to support people within the community and within the sector making that transition. We do quite a lot of sort of advice and education around it through BASC. We do quite a lot of opportunity stuff through our Try Sustainable Ammunition Day. So it's important to continue with that. And actually, it's one of the things that in the dossier is recognised, that the voluntary transition is one of the things they recognise is helping to reduce some of the risk which falls around lead shot being deposited into the environment.
Shooting is worth £2 billion to the UK economy, and more than 74,000 people are employed by the sector. Shooters fear the changes will mean many won't be able to afford to continue.
What's changed is that they're planning to ban lead shot for everything, not just live quarry. So your recreational sporting clay shooter is going to find that his intention to go out with his old Purdy and shoot sporting clays, that's not really going to be viable anymore, because it won't work with steel, and your 100-bird day out on a Sunday up on an Essex side-by-side shoot isn't going to cost you 50 quid anymore. It's going to cost you 150 quid. And if you do that every Sunday, it's not viable now for most people who do it casually.
BASC, the Gun Trade Association, the British Shooting Council and UK manufacturers will be taking part in the consultation process to protect the shooting community.
We've now got a 6-month public consultation. We've got scientific scrutiny. We've got socio-economic impact assessments to go through. And BASC, so we've got ourselves registered as an accredited stakeholder, so we'll be able to input into those consultation periods. So it's now really a case of sort of reviewing the evidence, looking at the gaps, challenging where we can, and making sure that what if anything ends up forming legislation is necessary, it's proportionate to the risk that is there, and then ultimately, if there are going to be bans which come through eventually through law, is actually making sure those transition periods are realistic.
The 6-month public consultation closes on November the 6th, 2022. Some shooters fear it's already too late to make a difference.
In the short term, there's the potential there that I will get a lot of firearms from England, from people who no longer want them, and I'll sell them to Americans, Australians, New Zealanders who do want them. I don't like that happening because I think it's a real tragedy that our firearms history, all these beautiful things that we've made and we've got, are heading relentlessly overseas. I wrote an article about it 20 years ago, trying to encourage English people to revere their history and their heritage more, because it seemed to me that the Americans did and we didn't. But the reality of it is that may just be what happens now.